Greetings, fellow beings.
Hey guys, I'm just going to start with a quick little info piece and what I've been up to lately. I know it's been quite a while since I've posted a new video, but I had a lot of personal stuff to deal with these last few months and more to go. I've also been working on my music quite a bit and have been trying to get a band together to perform my music. It's getting there, and in the meantime, we've made a music video for one of the songs. The music is currently in the stages of a horror, rock, punkish type of genre, but there are going to be a lot of genres that I'm going to try to end up tackling in the future. I'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested in checking it out. So today's video is on mysterious werewolf sightings, which have taken place over hundreds of years in many places around the world. I'm going to read to you some of the accounts I've found on Reddit where people have claimed to have seen the elusive dogmen or werewolves. If you're not familiar with the Beast of Bray Road, it's a very famous werewolf story which comes from Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Since I don't live too far from there, I went up there with my cousin and we filmed a drive up and down Bray Road just to give this video a little something special. I'm going to start this off by reciting what Wikipedia has to say about the Beast of Bray Road, and then I'm going to get to the stories.
Number 18.
According to Wikipedia, the Beast of Bray Road, or the Bray Road Beast, is a cryptid or cryptozoological creature first reported in 1936 on a rural road outside of Elkhorn, Wisconsin. The same label has been applied well beyond the initial location to any unknown creature from southern Wisconsin or northern Illinois. This paranormal report describes as having similar characteristics to those reported in the initial set of sightings. Bray Road itself is a quiet country road near the community of Elkhorn. The rash of claimed sightings in the late 1980s and early 1990s prompted a local newspaper, the Walworth County Week, to assign reporter Linda Godfrey to cover the story. Godfrey was initially skeptical, but later became convinced of the sincerity of the witnesses. Her series of articles later became a book titled The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf. The Beast of Bray Road is described by purported witnesses in several ways, as a bear-like creature as hairy as a biped resembling Bigfoot, and as an unusually large 2 to 4 feet tall on all fours, 7 feet tall standing up, intelligent wolf-like creature apt to walk on its hind legs and weighing about 400 to 700 pounds. It's also said that its fur is a brown-gray color resembling a dog or a bear. Although the Beast of Bray Road has not been seen to transform from a human into a wolf in any of these sightings, it has been labeled a werewolf in newspaper articles. For explanations, a number of animal-based theories have been proposed. They include that the creature is an undiscovered variety of wild dog, a wahila, said to be a giant prehistoric wolf similar to an amarok, or a wolf dog or a coy dog. It is also possible that hoaxes and mass hysteria have caused some falsehoods and sightings of normal creatures to be artificially lumped under the same label. Concurrently with the sightings in Wisconsin, there was a rash of similar encounters in the neighboring state of Michigan. Following the release of The Legend, a popular song about Michigan Dogman in 1987, author Steve Cook received dozens of reports, including photograph and film evidence of the creature. There is no known link between the sightings in adjoining states other than the similarity of the creature described. In 2002, a film surfaced, supposedly made in the 1970s. It became known as the Gable film because of a paper labeled affixed to the box. The film, just over 3 minutes long, shows the first of what looks like simple home movies, of kids riding snowmobiles, a man washing his truck. Near the end of the film, the person videotaping is riding down a remote dirt road when he stops and goes out to check what looks to be a huge, bulky creature on all fours. The creature suddenly runs after the cameraman, who tries to run away before there is a rustling and a brief shot of teeth and fangs before the camera falls to the ground. A second film was discovered and showed a police investigation after the cameraman in the first film is found dead. The police camera pans over to 2 officers examining the body, which is revealed to have been torn in half by whatever attacked the cameraman. In posts to several cryptozoology-related forums, a user unidentified as Don Coyote stated that he knew a relative of the dead body in the film. The relative said that the officer saw something that was apparently very traumatic. The officer lost his mind and began rambling, "Dogs have 4 toes, bears have 5. For years, the debate raged about whether the films were real or not. Finally, in 2010, on the History Channel program Monster Quest, Steve Cook confirmed that both films were fake, made in 2002 by Mike Agrusa, who had been a longtime fan of Cook's The Legend, a song about the Dogman. The creature in the first film was actually a man in a ghillie suit. The body in the second film was made of painted styrofoam. Although Monster Quest dramatized the event to make it appear that their expert had analyzed and found curious flaws in the film, then dispatched the werewolf expert Linda Godfrey to interrogate Cook to determine the truth. Cook claimed in a lengthy blog post that he informed all parties involved in the production that the film was fake weeks before filming on the episode began.
Number 17.
This is taken from a phone call to Coast AM. Listen, I just turned 60 here last November. Anyway, when I was 14 or 15, me and a buddy went hunting up on Burlington Northern Track, between the town of Dayton and Weedron. We just got a heavy snow. We got about 10 to 12 inches of snow. We made it all the way up there where the Weedron silica pits were. And we turned and went across the tracks, come back on the other side, and we were pretty well gassed out because it was a long walk in the deep snow. Anyway, we got about a half a mile from the state cemetery, and we weren't talking. We were pretty well minded. Anyway, I heard something growling and snarling, and Jimmy walked up behind me, and we were both looking. There was a big canine creature, okay? And there was a 4 or 5 strand barbed wire fence on the other side along the timberline. There was a big orange moon coming up in the east side of the river. The river runs north and south. Anyway, it came up to the edge of the fence. I had a 20 gauge single shot, and I think Jimmy had a 12 gauge single shot. I had mine cocked, and I imagine he had his cocked too. It stood up and was about 4 or 5 feet over the top of the fence. It was huge, and it was terrifying. Anyway, it had red eyes, and they were just as red as could be from the moonlight because the moon was still on the east side of the river coming up. We took off, and we usually cut down the east side of the cemetery and went down through the woods to the back Burlington Northern Track, but we were too scared to go that way, so we went around the cemetery on the west side and went all the way to his house. His dad and his buddies were down in the basement where they were playing cards. We ran down there and told them what had happened, and they didn't believe us, but it was still terrifying.
Number 16.
Era Township, Michigan. A group of 3 people in Michigan reportedly came across an unidentified dog-like creature in the woods of St. Clair County. The man reporting the sighting, a 46-year-old store manager who provided his full name but asked to remain anonymous, told Cryptozoology News that he and his son were walking through the woods with a friend when the creature showed up on March 7th. According to the man, his son was the one able to catch the better glimpse of the alleged creature. He did not immediately reply to follow-up questions regarding the age and name of the eyewitnesses. The report did not include the specific time of the event. "Just as I got a glimpse of the creature, it suddenly disappeared into the trees," his son said. It had black fur, the tail was huge, and it was at least 3 feet long. The eyewitnesses say he is sure the being wasn't a dog because of the way it moved. It was not dog-like at all. The purported creature, he said, was standing on 4 legs at the time of the sighting. The eyewitness also reported that the encounter only lasted a few seconds and that he and his father had never seen anything like it. There were no photographs or videos submitted with the original report.
Number 15.
In Muskego, Wisconsin, a 13-year-old in Waukesha County claims he had a terrifying encounter with a bipedal creature he was not immediately able to identify. The boy told Cryptozoology News on Sunday that he was walking his dog near a wooded area close to his home at about 8 p.m. when the canine companion began barking. "He was growling in the direction of the small woods near my street," he said about the February 22nd alleged encounter. "I take a closer look over and see nothing until I hear a deep, snarl. It sounded like a strangled wolf. The Wisconsin resident states he backed up immediately after realizing he was staring at a pair of yellow eyes. I got a good look at it. I stood there for a minute or so, racking my brain and thinking, what could this be? Then it took a step toward me, and I bolted back to my house. He described the animal as a 5 feet tall dog-like creature walking on 2 legs and exhibiting black and gray fur. Its head, he explained, had the long snout with large fangs and pointed ears. It also had long dark gray claws about 2 inches long. The Dogman is a cryptid reputed to live in the northwestern quadrant of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, although other sightings have been reported in different locations. The beast was first reported to have been seen in 1887 by 2 lumberjacks who described it as having a human body and a dog's head. In 2015, a woman told Cryptozoology News that she had witnessed an encounter between a group of Bigfoot and Dogman creatures in what looked like some sort of symbiosis, reminding her of the relationship between crocodiles and hippos. She described the animals as being the size of men, with pointy ears placed on top of their heads. Their bodies were reportedly covered with brown patchy hair and had human-like fingers with thick claws.
Number 14.
Abby in Wisconsin called into Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell to tell of the time she hit something on the road. I had a really weird experience about 3 months ago while driving home. I had to move my mom from Minneapolis to Madison, Wisconsin, and I was driving home on one of my trips, moving her stuff alone. It was about 1 a.m., and I was in the middle of nowhere. I wasn't in a town or anything, and I was really tired because I had been driving all day, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I distinctly saw a person running out of the woods straight towards the side of my car. And I was going about 65 and thought, okay, I've been driving too long now. I'm seeing things. All of a sudden, smack into the side of my car. I was terrified. It was pitch black out there. There was no traffic. There's nobody around and there's nothing near me. I was just in the middle of nowhere. This came out of the woods, running into the side of my car, denting it. It hit me so hard, and I saw it out of the corner of my eyes, and so I was really tired and don't know what I saw, but could have sworn it was on 2 legs, and it was probably about 6 feet tall or taller. What I thought I saw was a man wearing a gray sweatshirt and a hood. Art Bell at this point asks if she stopped the car. I was too scared. I was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't understand why someone would come out of the woods and run straight into my car when there's no traffic or anything. If they needed to cross the street, why would they wait until there was a car coming? So I thought, I should call the police. Then I thought, what did I just see? What was that? What do I say to the police? That somebody darted out of the woods and ran into my car? So I drove home. I was probably about 30 or 40 minutes away, and I was shaking. I was so scared. I don't know what had just happened to me. I got out to see if there was damage to my car. I thought about calling the police again, and I decided it had to be an animal because there was nothing around there. So the next day I looked in the papers and looked through everything to see if there were any dead bodies in the road, because that would have made the news. But there wasn't anything. So I don't know if it was an animal that I hit or what it was. Another thing that was terrifying was that it was running very, very fast. That's why I thought it couldn't have been a person. I knew not to stop. I was going about 65. No blood, no hair. I checked for blood because I thought maybe I hit somebody. No blood, but you can see the dent. It's on the driver's side of the car. That's where it smacked into me. You can definitely see the dent, but it wasn't as big as I thought it would be. It wasn't serious damage to my car or anything like that. Crypto researcher Linda Godfrey, the guest, noted that she had received similar Dogman-type reports in which something was observed on the side of the road, and the witnesses thought they were looking at somebody wearing a hoodie, only to realize, as they got closer, it was something else. From the Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell, September 3rd, 2015.
Number 13.
putting this out there in light of hearing about some other recent Pennsylvania sightings, so I wanted to share my experience. This first encounter happened to me about 4 weeks ago. I am a 42-year-old woman of sober mind, and I am not prone to embellishing. I have a 5-pound Chihuahua and an 80-pound pit bull that I walk around town every evening. This encounter happened at around 8 o'clock to 8:30 p.m., just after dusk, so the streetlights were on. There is a town park in Portage that lies on the edge of some woods. I would guess that the park is around 25 acres or so. I walked the dogs through the park, and then I decided I wanted to go around the block and the back side of the park. There is a main road that runs alongside of the front of the park and a dirt road that runs along the back side of the park. The roads meet at a streetlight. I was on the main road and got within about 25 yards of the streetlight, and there was a huge figure, about 7 feet tall, I estimate. It was standing just back from the light, and I could see just the legs. They were hair-covered and bent backwards like a dog. I could not make out the face or other details as it was standing back. Keep in mind, I have my 2 dogs with me, and my pit bull is extremely protective. The first thought I had was, oh shit, that is a big damn dog. And then it dawned on me of what I was seeing. My next thought was, it's a freaking werewolf. It was rocking side to side like it was waiting for us to get closer. That is when I yanked both leashes and ran towards home. If it were a dog, note that this thing was about 7 feet tall, it would have chased me and my dogs like a normal dog would do. But it just stood there pacing from one foot to the other, side to side. It was standing on 2 feet and not on all fours. My dogs did not seem to sense that anything was there, and there was no reaction from them, which I found very strange. Perhaps that thing was downwind, and the dogs did not see it because this all happened so fast. I got home and told my fiancé what had happened. He did not make fun of me. He believed me, actually. He encouraged me not to go that way again. Well, guess what? I went that way the next night because I had to convince myself that I was seeing things. This time I took the dirt road that circles to the back side of the park just to prove myself wrong. It was not quite dusk, so it was still pretty light out, and the woods are on either side, and there are no houses in this particular area. I got to within 150 feet of where I saw this thing, and my Chihuahua started growling, and all of his hair was standing up. He started barking and going in circles, looking for whatever it was that he sensed. No reaction at all from my pit. She is feisty and not afraid to fight intruders, so that really surprised me. About the same time the little dog was freaking out, there was a huge crash in the woods next to us, maybe 10 yards away or so. This area is very swampy, and there are quite a few large bushes and trees. This crash sounded like a tree falling, but like it fell instantly. It was loud, fast, and instant. I ran out of there so damn fast, I did not see anything this time other than my dog freaking out. I did not think I could move that fast. I got home safe and vowed never to take that trail again. Please keep in mind that this trail is very heavily used by cars and people daily, and what strikes me as so odd is to see or hear something like that there. Well, the next morning, I put the dogs out to pee, and they both freaked out and started growling, hair standing up and running up and down our fence, sniffing and digging at it. They get excited when they smell something that should not be there, as another dog or such would, but this is now how they were behaving. They acted very agitated and almost scared. It truly makes me wonder if something followed us home that night. Needless to say, if I walk the park, I stay away from the back side. The dogs get agitated when we are on the front side, and they can smell in that general direction. They will growl and whine. I always carry a loaded handgun no matter where I go, but something tells me that it would not help if that thing wanted to meet. So that is my story. Every word I swear to be true. You can take it for what it's worth. I would be very curious to know if anybody has any other reports like this in my area. Of all the years I have lived here and been on the backwoods trails, I have never felt fear or saw anything out of the ordinary. Now I am scared to walk in my own town. I would much rather be in the woods, and I have actually started walking those trails instead. Notes. In my conversation with the witness, they indicated the area has several abandoned coal mines, which would be a great sheltering for a large beast. The witness learned of the previous sightings and our contact information after listening to Butch Wachowski's recent appearance on Darkness Radio.
Number 12.
I live in a small rural town in Kansas that is very still at night. And on the quiet summer nights, I make it a point to take a nightly walk with my dog, and this particular evening in June was no exception. It was dusk, and most of the light was gone as my dog and I entered the yard. I noticed a rustling in the bushes where we buried a previous beloved pet. I assumed it was a cat or some sort of rodent, but as I scanned the row of bushes, I saw a large humanoid creature with wolf-like features. It was hunched over my pet's grave. Chills ran down my spine. I was frozen where I stood. It turned its head and looked me straight in the eye, and every hair on my body stood up. Within seconds, it ran on 2 feet as it remained slightly hunched over. I have never seen whatever it was since, but I never again felt completely at ease at night.
Number 11.
My buddy was in Iraq about 10 years ago, something like that. He always tells this story about he thinks he saw a werewolf, but this is definitely a female werewolf, right? How he knows this, it sounds gross, but I don't know how to describe it in any better way. He rescues dogs and some of them are neutered, so that time of the month happens. He said that this werewolf, it had the female attributes. It had breasts, and also it smelled. It smelled like that time of month. I don't know how to explain that in the right way, but he said he knows. They stopped on the side of the road, and it crossed right in front of them. They were in a truck or a car or something, and they got out of the car, and it turned around and looked at them, and it came up to them about 3 feet away. This thing comes up to him, and it stinks so bad, he said it smelled like a dirty dog from a pound.
Number 10.
My sighting took place around 11:30 p.m. on November 4th, 2009. I work for the local 73 toll road in Newport Beach, California, and lately we've had some construction on the surrounding roads for the past few months. I am a second shift manager and work 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., and every night driving home, I take the exact same route at pretty much the same time every night. On this night, I was coming off the exit for the 133 road connector, and I'll never forget what I saw. While stopped at the stoplight, I saw a group of 3 large, 4-legged creatures dash out from the trees along the road. I started second-guessing myself, and I tried to convince myself I was seeing things. I made the left turn at the light, and while the speed limit was still 40 miles an hour at this point, I looked up and almost peed my pants. Those 3 beasts were running upright. The wolves, which seemed to be most logical guess, were about 6.5 feet tall and looked like they could easily weigh 250 to 275 pounds each. They had snouts and mouths that almost could be expressive, being able to smile and frown, and the fur was dark, although there wasn't enough light to tell if it was dark brown or black. My car being a 6-cylinder, it could get going if it needed to. I was going 45 miles per hour, and the giant wolves were keeping up with ease. I then literally put the pedal to the metal and sped up to 70. I was sweating profusively and having a panic attack. As I sped up to 70, the wolves stopped following me, considering I was about to enter the high-traffic part of the road. The wolf in front seemed to stop on a dime and watch me drive off. I did not hear any howls before or after the sighting. I proceeded to head home ASAP. I told my girlfriend what I saw, and she deemed my imagination was running wild. I also told my coworkers the next day following the sighting, but nobody believes me to this day. I know I'm not crazy, and I know what I saw. I still have been taking the same route home every night, and I have not run into anything since that night of the sighting. Who knows what they actually were, but all I know is that I do not want to run into them again.
Number 9.
There has been another reported sighting of an upright canine in Pennsylvania. This particular sighting was near an area that our team has received previous activity accounts. The following information are notes taken by Butch Witowski after speaking to the witness. Here are the notes I took when I spoke with the witness on Sunday, February 21st, 2016. I'm waiting for his written statement and a map pinpointing the area he was in when the sighting occurred. Witness said he was walking a trail in State Game Lands, number 166, adjacent to the swamp area near the creek. He had his shotgun for a walk in order to get a few shots off at some crows. The sun was just starting to set, but there was plenty of daylight left. When he got past the swamp, there's a large patch of mountain laurel that is very high, maybe 5 to 6 foot in places. It was at the patch of mountain laurel he felt uneasy, like he was being watched. Note that at this time in the conversation, the witness' voice changes and he is distraught. After a slight pause, he continues the report. He turned and looked at a patch of mountain laurel growth over his shoulder, and he could see something standing in the growth. As he turned to get a better look, he saw 2 muscular legs under the laurel, but could only see from the shoulders up as it was behind a large path of growth. It was at least 8 foot tall, and it had locked its eyes on his. I asked what the color of the eyes were. He said yellow, and it had, from what he could see, a wolf-like head and dark eyes or black, short, fluffy hair. It never took its eyes off him as he backed away. The witness chokes up again. As he made his way out of the area, he had a real bad feeling about what just took place. He has hunted the area all his life and has never had anything out of the ordinary happen in the game lands during hunting season or out of season. I asked him how he found me. He said he was looking for a few weeks on who to report it to, but never found anyone other than Bigfoot people, and this was not a Bigfoot. He came across my website on Google mentioning our hunt for a bipedal wolf-like creature, and he filled out the report.
Number 8.
June or July of 1992 at about 5 p.m., location Southern Maryland. This is a rather short encounter because I was riding in a car and basically saw it and rode past it. I have been past the site hundreds of times since, but have never gotten out and walked around the area. Maybe I should. This encounter changed my life. When I read the encounter on this sub and hear the people's stories, I never discount them. Why? Because I know what I saw, and who am I to question someone else's experience? Sure, there are a lot of made-up stories and creepypasta out here, but I strive to find credible-sounding accounts and share them with you all. Here is my personal experience. It was evening, and my family and I were coming back from Chesapeake Beach, Maryland, from having dinner with my brother, mom, and dad. I was 15 to 16, and in the back right passenger seat, chilling with my brother. Riding along, I just looking out the window, and there's this little road that merges onto the main road to the left. So as we merge, we pick up a little speed. We're going around maybe 25 to 30 miles an hour, and you have to cross this little bridge that's really bumpy, so we slowed even more. Once we did that, I look up ahead about 75 yards, and I see something standing on the edge of the woods a little off to the right. It had both arms on a tree, just standing there, meaning its right arm was on the tree about shoulder height, and its left arm was on the tree at about shoulder height. It was about 7 foot tall, maybe even taller, had a wolf-looking face, only larger like a dire wolf from Game of Thrones, really broad shoulders, muscular arms, a barrel chest, and it narrowed the rest of the way down. It was dark brown and the hair was medium length. I didn't get a great look at the legs because it locked eyes with me. I knew I saw it and it saw me. I saw it in a good distance up ahead and was like, what the hell is that standing on the wood edge? Soon as I said that, I locked eyes with it. I saw it for a good 10 to 15 seconds because of how far up ahead I first noticed it moving around and how slow we were traveling. It took my breath when I first realized what I was looking at, and my first thought was, God, that thing is ugly. It had very pointy features, and it didn't look like Bigfoot, but an actual werewolf. A lot of people call it a dogman, but I'm more inclined to say this was an actual wolf man. I said out loud to my family, "Did you guys see that thing?" Obviously, they were like, "See what?" Another thing, this was in southern Maryland where there are no bears or other large animals, so that was my encounter. My family still doesn't believe me, and most other people think I'm crazy or lying, so I very rarely tell anyone about it. But it was real, and it was there, and what bothers me is why was it there, and where do they come from?
Number 7.
Wisconsin werewolf sighting number 1, year 1936. Location Jefferson County, Wisconsin. Schackelman was driving along Highway 18 just outside of Jefferson, Wisconsin, when he noticed someone digging in a field off the side of the road. The site was a location where the Native American burial ground was believed to be. I swear I'm not making this up. When Schackelman slowed down to get a better look, the man turned and faced him. It turns out that it was a hairy creature that stood on 2 legs, which Schackelman described as looking like a mix between an ape and a dog. The creature had a general shape of a large man with opposable thumbs and everything. Schackelman drove off in a hurry but remained curious about the creature. The next night he drove past the same area hoping to maybe see the creature again, and he did. This time the man-beast growled at him and in a way that sounded eerily human, making a sound that he describes as "Gadara." Schackelman freaked out, and the creature ran off.
Number 6.
An anonymous woman called in late to the Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell show to tell of a weird encounter she had 25 years earlier. Crypto researcher Linda Gottfried was the guest. She mentions UFOs, and I've always thought of these beings were from another planet myself. This would explain the small amount of sightings, inability to capture one, and the stories about them for hundreds of years. The lady began, "I've been wanting to tell you guys this story that happened about 25 years ago with my children. My children would cross the road and go up to this guy's driveway and play all the time. Well, one evening, they went running in the house. They said, 'Mom, we heard a werewolf.' I thought, well, now, they heard this weird dog, you know. I went back outside, and I could hear it too, and it wasn't like a regular dog. It was very, very odd. Well, I didn't know what to think about it, and I was a typical housewife, cooking and taking care of stuff. So I went back in the house, and it was just when the sun was going down when this happened, and I lived in kind of a woods area. But this guy, like I said, had a big long concrete driveway that my kids would play on. Well, that evening, and I want you to know that God will strike me dead that this is the truth, we had a big picture window in the house, and that guy was a doctor that lived up on this hill, and he would come home late in the night. Well, I heard a strange sound, and I went to that picture window, and I looked out in my yard. I could see the car lights and him coming up the road, and right there, I always thought it was a joke. Werewolves were a joke, and I saw this thing that had a huge back, and when it turned its head around, it had a snout at least 1.5 feet long on it. Its body was huge. I'd never seen anything like that. Then you mentioned about UFOs, as she's talking to Linda Godfrey. There was some weird lights that we seen just prior to me seeing this. It scared me so bad that I ran into the back room and locked the door." Art Bell asked her to describe the sound. "Well, sort of like a weird dog screaming, you know, sort of like that. I'm not really sure exactly how to describe it." And then Linda asked how the doctor was involved. "It was just outside when he came in. He came home late in the evening because he was like an emergency room doctor and he worked late, and I had been staying up a little bit later than usual. I guess this was close to midnight, maybe around that time, and I never expected anything. I just thought, here he comes, but just the way the car drove in, the way the lights came on into my yard, I did not see any hands or arms, but I did see it moved its body and it had huge shoulders. I never seen anything like that in my life. It had to be at least 6 foot tall, maybe, but its back was so large when it turned its head. Now, I want you to know, I thought all this stuff was a joke, and I never believed in anything like werewolves because of how I grew up. I'm an older lady, and I watched all those horror films years ago. I thought all that stuff was a joke, but when I saw that freaked me out so much.
Number 5.
This sighting happened in the winter of '05. My best friend and I were on our way home after visiting friends in Hickman, Kentucky. So we're driving down the highway by the Hickman and Union City, Tennessee. As soon as we get into Union City, we see something running across the road. It was dark gray in color and about the size of a big German shepherd. It looked like a wolf with very yellow eyes, like Michael Jackson's eyes at the end of the Thriller video. The wolf wasn't running fast, and it looked at us while running across the road. It ran from right to left into an open field, and that was it. We were both like, what was that? We weren't scared, just puzzled trying to figure out what it was. I know what a coyote looks like, so that was out of the question. It didn't feel like we were seeing a normal animal. Any ideas of what it could have been? I have no idea.
Number 4.
West Virginia, date unknown. A caller named Ben called in to tell his grandfather's run-in with a possible werewolf. Sadly, he never dates the story, but he does claim that it occurred in West Virginia. I have a story. It's a story that my grandfather used to tell us when we were kids. He was in the Korean War and World War II, so he's seen it all. Well, he grew up in West Virginia, and he always told us this story when we were kids, and I always believed it. Him and his brother were involved in illegal activities. They were moonshiners. They were crossing the New River one time, and a big black creature was up on 2 legs. My grandpa always said this, that when he saw it, it stooped down, and it ran on all 4s, chasing them to their truck. When it got to the truck, it ripped the door open. It grabbed him by the arm, pulling his shoulder out of its socket. His brother pulled a .357 out and shot the creature off the truck as they drove off. His story has never changed. He just passed away about a year ago, and the striking thing is, I took him to see that new movie, The Wolfman. And when we're in the theater and the Wolfman transformed, and my grandfather sees the creature up on 2 legs and then gets down on all 4s and chasing people, he nudged me and said,
Hey Ben, that's exactly what I saw. Number 3.
I watched an episode of Monsters and Mysteries in America. It was the Night Stalker, Skinwalker episode. When I saw the pictures of a girl that was being terrorized by the Night Stalker, it reminded me of a strange encounter my brother and I had this last winter. We were out on Navajo Dam Road cutting wood. We had turned onto a dirt road on the northeast side. After cutting a few trees at the bottom of the canyon, we decided to go further up the hill to see if we could find more dead trees. I also had my dog and son with me. We made our way up the hill and it flattened out. There were a few dead trees, so we decided to stop and cut those as it was getting dusk and colder. My son and his dog got out and were playing fetch while my brother Chris and I prepared the trees to cut. As we were about to finish up, my kiddo came running up the hill and said he had found some really neat looking tracks of an animal. So as I made my way down the hill towards my truck with an armful of wood, I stopped to look at the tracks. They looked like claw marks in the sand and were in the same direction as we had climbed to cut. As I was looking at the tracks, I noticed I didn't hear my brother's chainsaw anymore. As soon as I realized the motor sound had stopped, I heard a scream, the sound of a shotgun being pumped, then a shot being fired. Before I could even react, Chris came running at breakneck speed down the hill, past me, and into the truck yelling, "Drop the wood! Let's go!" My dog was barking, growling, and backing up with hair raised on her back and neck. I shuttled my kid and dog with wood in hand down the hill, threw wood in the back seat with my kiddo and dog. Needless to say, we got the hell out of there. My brother refused to speak until we were on the main road and almost to Aztec. While he was cutting wood, he had the feeling of being watched. Thinking that I was playing a trick on him, he sat his running chainsaw down and went to catch me in the act before I could scare him. Not knowing I was further down the hill with my son, he climbed the rest of the hill and was looking around to find me. He saw us down by my truck and also saw a shadow opposite him by a sandstone cluster to his right. We always carry a gun with us while we cut, because you never know what kind of creatures you may encounter out there. He popped off a shot to get my attention and also took a shot at whatever it was he had seen. He told me it ran in between a rock ledge and some bushes. He didn't want to waste time and tried to take another shot at it. Before the second shot, the chainsaw dropped because it had run out of gas, which is how I was able to hear the gun being cocked and fired. It scared him so bad that he refuses to go back out that way to collect wood. Always the skeptic, I thought he was bullshitting me, trying to scare me, but then I remembered the claw marks my kiddo and I found, and knowing that nothing scares my brother nor dog. He said the thing he saw was a good 7 feet high, if not taller and hairy, all over with a wolf face and eyes. He caught a slight glimpse before it slipped between the bushes and stones. I was kinda laughing at him in my head till I remembered those claw marks on the ground. When I saw the story tonight, I had seen those claw marks before, where we were cutting wood.
Number 2.
I would like to pass along a true story told to me by my grandfather when I was a young man. The story involves my great-grandfather, whose name was James McNamara. He was a patrolman in the New York City Police Department. This incident occurred in October of 1911 during the late evening hours. James was assigned to the theater district in the area of Broadway and 42nd Street. Another patrolman by the name of Dobbins was 2 blocks south on Broadway near 40th Street. Theater goers were walking out and enjoying the scene when suddenly there were screams emanating from an alleyway just below James's position. Both patrolmen ran toward the ruckus, forcing their way through hundreds of fleeing pedestrians. As they reached the alleyway, a tall, hairy beast ran out onto Broadway and towards 40th Street. Neither patrolman could believe what they saw. An 8-foot-tall wolf with human-like arms and legs, running with skill and speed down the middle of Broadway. Soon the beast was facing a New York City Packard squad car, so it changed direction and was moving back towards McNamara and Dobbins. The beast was growling as it moved forward. The patrolmen took positions by a newsstand, hiding and waiting for the horrible creature to move before them. Soon, the beast was at the entrance of another alleyway near 42nd Street. Both patrolmen pulled their revolvers and took deadly aim. The beast quickly dropped to the gutter. Immediately, McNamara and Dobbins surrounded the body as other officers joined them. None of the public was allowed to come within 100 feet of the unknown canine. The body was quickly removed and taken to a mortuary. Both patrolmen were placed on other assignments. The squad was told by their superiors that this was simply mistaken identity and that the deceased was a man in costume. Of course, that was not true. The press was later told that a large mad dog caused the disruption and that none of the public were injured. A few months later, a brief article published in a Louisiana newspaper, the St. Mary Banner, Franklin, Los Angeles, and picked up by a few other media outlets. New York. No sign remained in the Broadway Theater District the next morning following the scenes that were enacted there one night when a maddened beast charged up and down, spreading terror and consternation, causing handsomely gowned women to faint and strong men to leave their cocktails untouched and flee for safety. That lion with the burning tail that broke loose during the Coney Island fire last spring was a tame affair in comparison with the Broadway monster. The beast is described in the police blotter as a large terrier, but it is evident that the police were anxious to minimize the seriousness of the panic. Hundreds of the witnesses will testify that the animal was at least 8 feet tall. Its foaming mouth and wicked fangs were too terrible for description. The beast was seen first at Broadway and 42nd Street with a blood-curdling It rushed up to a beautiful woman, and her companion rushed to her assistance and fearlessly planted a kick in the monster's hind quarters, screaming at the wild thing as it tore off down Broadway. At 40th Street, two boys, with the foolhardiness of youth, tried to seize the animal by its tail. The beast turned upon them and bayed horribly. On to 39th Street, scattering pedestrians right and left, raced the great dog, if dog indeed it was. At the corner, it emitted a whine that was even more terrifying than its growl, and turned back the way it had came. As the beast ran back, Patrolman McNamara and Dobbins drew their revolvers. Dobbins shot straight and true, and the monster keeled over in the gutter. The police have offered no further statements. Note: after I received the email, I contacted Gerald and discussed the information I received. I'm convinced he is telling me what he was told, and that he believes it to be true. I did a bit of research and found an article from the Holbrook News, Holbrook, Arizona, March 1st, 1912, though the article seemed to be an edited version of the original text.
Number 1.
When I was a little girl, my pawpaw lived in an old farmhouse in the upper end of Cleveland County, North Carolina. We used to go visit him every Saturday. My dad, my mom, my baby brother, and I, along with usually several of my dad's brothers and sisters and their assorted children, would congregate after lunch at Pawpaw's. Us cousins would play together outside, out in the woods, which ran behind my pawpaw's farm and stretched for probably 10 miles to a dirt road, beyond which was an apple orchard and a cattle pasture. This was the early 80s in a rural area, back when kids could take off to the woods for hours and it was okay. We would have dinner together and then hang out until it was bedtime for us kids, and then we'd all head home. At the time, I had just turned 8. My cousin Jay was 6. My brother and Jay's sister were both small toddlers, barely walking. The night in question, Jay and I and our little siblings were the only kids present at Pawpaw's. He and I had spent the day playing in the woods as usual, while out in the yard, Jay was playing with his prized brand new skateboard. After supper, we hung out in the back bedroom, watching TV until our parents informed us that it was time to go. Pawpaw's house had a glassed-in porch, which also served as a laundry room on the front porch, right outside the kitchen. This porch, because of the way the lot was laid out and the house was built, was fairly tall, and looking out the window gave you a panoramic and slightly elevated view of the backyard. I would speculate that the porch windows were about 20 feet off the ground, and the backyard sloped away from the porch. The backyard was lit by 2 large lights, one which was mounted on a pole to the left of the yard, the other mounted on the side of Pawpaw's shop, which was to the right. They were very bright, and each light lit up a fairly large area. The only really shadowy part of the backyard was the area where a large tree stood, casting a shadow that fell between the shop and the greenhouse, which was to the far left of the yard. It was under this tree that Jay and I had left his skateboard when we stopped playing to eat supper. He and I had decided that we should go out and get it while our parents were still saying their goodbyes in the kitchen. The Wolfman, at this point, was in the backyard. We saw him at the same time. As soon as we entered the porch, he was man-sized and he looked exactly like a werewolf from a bad B-movie. He had a shaggy dark brown wolfman head with long pointed ears and a lighter brown muzzle. His hands were human-like as best I can remember, though they were covered in dark fur and he had long claws. He was wearing a red and black checked flannel shirt and blue jeans. I don't remember anything about his feet, whether he had shoes or claws, but his legs were straight like a person's, not bent backwards like a dog's. He was walking back and forth in the yard, almost robot-like, or as if he were on a track. I can't really describe it well. It was like his legs were moving a little, but not enough to actually count as walking. It was more like he was gliding, but in a jerky way. His body was human in proportion. He would move from the edge of the light near the greenhouse across to the light near the shop, stopping when he reached the end of the illuminated area and turning around in a strange jerky way and gliding back. His eyes were red and glowed some, like one of those laser lights that you use to tease cats, that color and about that level of brightness. The only time he was out of our sight was when he passed into the shadowed area of the tree. He seemed to be showing off for us, wanting us to see him, or at least that's what it felt like. The feeling that he carried with him was of overwhelming malevolence. I felt like he knew we were there and could see us watching, and feel that we were afraid, and he was glad for that. Not sure if that makes sense, but it was what I felt at the time. Dread and fear, like he was aware of us and doing what he was doing on purpose just to scare us. Of course, we freaked out and started screaming for our parents. And of course, once they all rushed out onto the porch, only to hear us hysterical because of the wolfman in the backyard, they said the usual parent thing about overactive imagination and too much Scooby-Doo. Because even though he was there walking back and forth right in front of them, and we could both see him, none of the adults present could. I remember pointing and saying, "It's out there!" and being really frustrated because they couldn't see it. Finally, my dad, determined to put an end to the nonsense, announced that he was going to go out into the yard and get Jay's skateboard from under the tree. We tried to stop him, but he went anyway. At that time, the wolfman was still doing his strange gliding walk back and forth. When my dad opened the porch door and hit the steps that led from the porch to the yard, he triggered the motion sensor light, which was on the corner of the porch awning, lighting up the shadowed tree area. Just before this happened, the wolfman had stepped into the shadowy area and disappeared from view in the dark. When the light came on, lighting up the tree area, the wolfman was just gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, as they say. We never saw him again, though we became mildly obsessed with werewolves for a while after that and started hoarding silver in case we needed to make silver bullets. When you are a child, it is pretty amazing what you can consider normal. We were scared the time that it happened, but it's like afterwards it didn't feel completely real because it was so bizarre, and we sort of made a game out of it. A few weird things happened to us in the woods after that, but nothing that could be considered paranormal beyond doubt, and nothing like seeing the wolfman. Years passed, but I always wondered about what we saw that night. My cousin Jay forgot about it altogether. I asked him about it a few months ago, and he didn't remember it at all. What really brought it back to my memory was the story in Linda Godfrey's Real Wolfmen about the girl who saw the hitchhiking werewolf wearing clothes. Before that, I'd never seen a serious report of a canine or lupin humanoid wearing clothes in any publication. I don't often tell anyone about the wolfman we saw because it sounds so completely crazy. Of course, my parents and Jay's parents never for 1 second believed we saw anything. I don't fully know the history of the land around Paw Paws. I know that there were lots of Catawba Indians in that area before the colonial times, and that there are several strange formations in that part of the country that people claim are Indian mounds, though none of them seem to be officially recognized as such. There have been several Bigfoot flaps in that county as well, and there are black panthers there. I have seen both black and tan panthers, as my father and many hunters he knows, though they are not, in my opinion, anything supernatural, just regular animals. I have no idea to this day what it was that we saw in the backyard. I find it hard to believe that it was actually a werewolf, but I feel like it was something paranormal. Seeing it caused me to have a lifelong interest in cryptozoology and Fortean phenomenon. I've thought about it a lot, and I sort of feel like John Keel was right when he suggested that there is something out there that messes with us, just because it can. Like, maybe something that wanted to be scary and knew that a stereotypical werewolf would frighten some little kids. I've even wondered if it could have been someone dressed in a costume playing a prank, but that wouldn't explain the weird gliding, unnatural way it moved, or the way it was able to disappear so fast, or the fact that apparently 5 adults couldn't see it when 2 kids could. Just thought that this might interest anyone because of the novelty. It sounds so out there and made up that I doubt anyone would believe it anyway. I have told maybe 4 people my entire life about it, including my ex-husband who did not believe me. I have never even mentioned it to my current husband because it's just so weird. I would, however, be interested to know if anyone else out there has experienced anything similar, either a werewolf-type form dressed in clothing or something that was something pretending to be something it really was not. For whatever reason, I feel strongly that this is what is happening. Alright guys, I'd like to thank you again for listening. Be sure to check out my other videos if you haven't already. There's a lot of personal experiences of my own in there. And even though I do live in northern Illinois and around southern Wisconsin, I can't say that I've seen any werewolves or dogmen, thankfully. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. We finally reached 400 subscribers. That's a pretty cool milestone for me. If you're interested in music, then check out my new music video from the band that I'm working on. And until next time, just remember,
Be aware. And keep your eyes open.